Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I did not think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Oh, speaking of the science of life, Lane, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I saw from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shawman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it, Lane, that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the wine?
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think I'm very much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It isn't a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane, that will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower classes aren't to set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, how are you? What brings you back up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else would bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algernon.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
Got good neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Oh, Shropshire? Ah, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had said you would come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really can't see anything romantic about proposing. It's very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then all the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I've no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce courts were specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
You have been eating them the whole time.
This is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, you didn't eat it, you're going to eat it all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Of Cecily? What do you mean by Cecily? What on earth do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you really mean to say you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would. I'm more than usually hard up.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
Well, that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, now that I read the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours at all.
Well, of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, that is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Quite aware of that, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It's not the sort of thing one should talk about in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you really want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes! Charming old lady she is too, lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells?
Oh, my dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That surely is a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think all aunts should be exactly like your aunt. It's absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her dear uncle? From little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. Now, there is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your card. Here's one. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany W. I'll keep this as proof your name is Ernest, in case you ever try to deny to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, boy. I think you had better have the thing out at once.
Alger, you are talking exactly like a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. Produce your explanation. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Bunburyist. And now I am quite sure of it.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, first, produce my cigarette case.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about it at all. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a small boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Now, Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, out of motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that's nothing to you, old boy. You're not going to be invited. I will tell you candidly that it isn't in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have wandering all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
I don't know that you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is put in the position of a guardian, one is obliged to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty. and as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother called Ernest, who lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The whole truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
And that would be not at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not my forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You really should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. And Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
Oh, I know. You are absurdly careless about invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
I think you had really better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the sort. To begin with, I dine with her on Monday. Once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am always treated as a member of the family, and I might sit down with no woman at all, or two. And in the third place, I know exactly whom she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the rise. The number of women one sees in London flirting with their own husband. Oh, it looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Oh. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of my brother Ernest, and I would certainly advise you to do the same with Mr. Bumbleton. With that invalid friend who has your absurd name.
Bunbury. Nothing could induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. Any man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
If I marry a sweet, charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
And that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, don't try to be cynical. It's so easy to be cynical.
It's not easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about me. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Buckingham and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
It's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart, aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry for a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to climb dear Lady Aubrey, for I haven't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looked quite 20 years younger. Now, I've a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta. Lane! 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 Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers when I went down to market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane, that will do.
Thank you.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had comments with Lady Aubrey, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed colour from what cause I, of course, cannot say. But thank you, Algernon. I've quite a treat for you tonight. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's a very nice woman and very attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. That would put my table completely out. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a terrible ball, and I need hardly say a great disappointment to me. But I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is taken ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This silly-sally little question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind should hardly be encouraged in others. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. As far as any improvements in his ailments goes, I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury for me to kindly not to have another relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception of the season, and one wants something to encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said what they had to say, which was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. The music, however, is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up, if you will come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly run. People always seem to think they're improper, and either look shocked which is vulgar or laugh which is worse. German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I should like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence from the room.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Ma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact, and I often wish in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I knew I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and it's reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone by the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. From the moment Algernon mentioned to me he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But Gwendolen, you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
Yes. I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you really mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, this is clear clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculation, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, darling, to speak quite frankly, I don't much like the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a very charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack. If any at all, indeed, it does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack's notorious domesticity for the name John. And I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasures of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Well, Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you from any possible disappointment, I think it only fair to say quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Oh, my darling, I've never loved anyone in this world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like this, especially when there are other people.
Mr. Worthing! The rising from the semi-recovered posture! It is most indecorous!
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing.
Pardon me, you are engaged to no one! When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It should hardly be a matter that should be able to arrange for herself. Now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait below for me in the carriage. Mamma, in the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, in the carriage, Mom! You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer
I
standing.
feel I am bound to tell you, you are not on my list of eligible young men. Although I do have the same list as the dear Duchess of Woolton has. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. And men should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion of a man who desires to be married to know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would cause a pre-series stage to the upper classes and probably leads to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be able to reside in the country.
I have a house in Belgrave Square, but it It's let by the year to Lady Bloxham, but I can get it back whenever I like it. 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
She goes out very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, there's no guarantee of respectability of character. What's number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. Oh, I thought there was something that can be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Oh, I'm afraid I don't really have any. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us at the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents, Lady Bracknell.
Both? To lose one, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. But to lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of calms? Or did he rise to the ranks of the aristocracy?
The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I really don't know. I said I had lost both my parents, but it might be nearer the truth to say they seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an elderly gentleman of a very charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing's a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
Handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles on, an ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the private
Oh, the line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I feel I am somewhat bewildered with what you have just told me. To be born, rather to be bred in a handbag, whether it handles or not, seems to me to display a serious contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, and remind one of the excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that misfortunate event led to. As for the particular locality where that handbag was found, a cloakroom at Victoria Station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has been probably used for that purpose before now, but it can never be regarded as an assured basis in a recognized position in a good society.
Well, then may I ask what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's
I
happiness.
would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire a relation as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce a parent of either sex before the season is over.
Well, I don't know how I can manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at the moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that ought to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What does it have to do with me? You could hardly dream that Lord Bracknell and myself will allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry a cloakroom and to form a life of apostle. Good morning, Mr. Worthing!
Good morning! For heaven's sake, Algernon, don't play the gospel tune! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right, boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn has refused you? Oh, I know it is a way she has. Gwendolyn is always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
No. Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I never met such a gorgon. And I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm sure that Lady Bracknell is one. At any rate, she's a monster without being a myth, which is quite unfair. I'm sorry, Algie. I suppose I really shouldn't talk to you about your own aunt in this way.
I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the smallest knowledge of how to live, nor the remotest instinct about when to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
I won't argue about it. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
My word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. I say, Algie, you don't suppose there's the smallest chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in, say, 150 years?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly well phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays, and you can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The whole thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
Well, I should extremely like to meet them. What on earth do they talk about?
The fools? Well, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, my dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What silly ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
And what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy nowadays, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's a sort of thing that runs in families. You would much better say a severe chill.
You're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the kind?
Of course it isn't.
Oh, very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him!
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in him. Won't you feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She goes long walks, has a capital appetite, pays no attention whatsoever to her lessons.
I should rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Well, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Besides, Gwendolyn and Cecily are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Oh, women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table of witnesses, we really must go up and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
It always is nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to the theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, let's go to the club.
Ugh, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot around to the Empire around 10.
No, I despise looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind work where there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look of Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children says to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. But, although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Darling.
The story of your romantic origin as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you even more incomprehensible to me. Your town address in the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There's a good postal service, I suppose? It may be necessary to do something drastic. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will write to you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you out to your carriage, won't you, darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out, Lane.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane. I'm going Bunbury. back until Saturday. You can put my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
What a perfect pessimist you are, Lane.
I do my best to give satisfactions.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever loved in my whole life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm merely a little anxious about poor Bunbury's health, that is
If
all.
you're not careful, your friend Mr. Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape one of these days.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily. Surely it's due to the Terran occupation as watching the flowers is much rather Woolton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray, open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German, Miss Prism. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town. Indeed, he always lays particular stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
I do not think that even I could produce an effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is a diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all those 3-volume novels people send us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novels. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are.
I hope it's not unhappily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much. The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no, it was abandoned. I mean that in the sense of lost or mislaid. Do work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to take a stroll in the park. With you, Dr. Chasuble.
I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope you are not inattentive, Cecily.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as, by all accounts, that unfortunate young man, his younger brother, seems to be. And now, I will not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, merely drawn from the pagan authors. I will see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I have a headache after all, and a walk will do it good.
Ah, with pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Yes, that would be delightful. Cecily, you will study your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee, you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you, Miss Prism, were in the garden. He said he was very anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Pray ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out. Uncle Jack is sure to be back soon.
Yes.
Oh, I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he will look just like everyone else. Oh, he does.
You must be my little cousin Cecily.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from my card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, you mustn't think that I'm wicked, cousin Cecily. I'm really not wicked at all.
If you are not, you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, I have been a little reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be very proud of that, although I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you were here at all. Uncle Jack will be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I am obliged to go up by the first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the business appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone out to buy your outfit.
I certainly won't let Jack buy my outfit. He has absolutely no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you require neckties. Uncle is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday. You'd have to choose between this world and the next world in Australia.
Well, the accounts I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me! I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite without having a buttonhole first.
A mère Chania?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. You are too much alone, Dr. Chaswell. You ought to get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a womanthrope, never.
Oh, believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The practice, as well as the precept of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from the fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing?
I have had to return sooner than I expected, dear Canon. I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Ernest, dead!
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will be right.
I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
Oh, no. He died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it would seem.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
Oh, no. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Oh, I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would, no doubt, wish me to make some slight allusion to the tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, confirmations, christenings, on days of humiliation and festal days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral as a part of a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies that I drew.
I say, Dr. Chasuble, you mentioned christenings, didn't you? Now, I suppose you know how to christen all right, don't you? Or what I mean to say is you are just continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in his parish. I have often spoken to the poor classes on the subject, but they do not seem to understand what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant whom you have in mind, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes. No, but no, it's not for any infant, dear Dr. Chasuble. I am very fond of children, but the fact is, I should like to be christened myself. This very afternoon, if you've nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have, at any rate. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you at all, if you think I'm a little too old or anything like that.
No, not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
The immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. The sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to be performed at that time. A case of twins that occurred on one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Jenkins, the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, well, I don't see much fun in being christened with the other babies. That would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. And now I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them. Cicely!
My child!
Uncle Jack, what is the matter? Do look happy. Why, you look as if you've got a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother!
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, these are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Oh!
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, are you not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing can induce me to take his hand. I think his coming here disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Why, Ernest has just been telling me all about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, who he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good one who is so kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Well, of course I admit that all the faults were on my side, but I must say that my brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I rather expected a warmer welcome, especially considering it is the first time that I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, then this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation. We might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, do come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is done.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Oh, Algy, you scoundrel! You must get out of here at once! I don't allow any Bunbury in here!
I put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to your own. I suppose that is right?
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have packed it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order up the dog cart. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
Well, I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you.
Oh, My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew in that manner. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. Why on earth don't you go up and change? You look perfectly ridiculous. It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying with me for a week as a guest or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. I think you would be most unfriendly if I did. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it most unkind if you didn't.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long about it. I never saw anybody take so long to dress with such little result.
At any rate, it's better than to be always overdressed, as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I always make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct is an outrage, and your presence here, in my garden, is perfectly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bun burying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I really came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to fetch the dog cart.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice ride?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part?
Yes, and a very painful parting it is, too.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for such a brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is quite simply a very young girl's records of her own thoughts and observations, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first dared to look upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily!
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about it, Jack. I don't care about anybody in the world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Of course, you silly boy. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad. You, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is very much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in it after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling! And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you, and near this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name. And this is the bracelet with the true lovers knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But, my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write them for you. I wrote 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do let me see them, Cecily.
I couldn't possibly. It would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But Cecily, was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last month. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But my own sweet Cecily, why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I'd done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very hurt indeed to hear you had broken it off, especially when the weather was so charming.
It would have hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Dear romantic boy.
You'll never break off our engagement again?
I don't think I could, now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But my own sweet Cecily, you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
Well, what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Yes, Dr. Chasuble is the most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can only imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important matter of christening. On the most important matter of business.
Oh.
I shan't be gone more than half an hour.
Well, considering we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax is called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, she states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Well, Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out. Uncle Jack assures me back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it's so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How very nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
Of course.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then I think that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps now might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside of the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I
think that quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for a man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt some female relative of advanced years resides here as well?
No, I have no mother, nor indeed any relations.
Indeed?
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange he never mentioned he had a ward before. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. Although, I can't say the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have been ever since I met you, but I am bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do. I believe that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one must always be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candor, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be quite unreadable, would it not?
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me he had a brother before.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for quite a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And besides, I've never heard any man mention his brother before. The subject seems quite distasteful to most men. You have lifted a load from my mind, Cecily. It would have been terrible if any lad had come across a friendship like ours. Although, you are quite sure it's not Mr. Ernest Worthing that is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dear Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make it a secret to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
It's certainly very strange. Mr. Ernest Worthing proposed to me. The announcement would be made in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception, dear Gwendolyn. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would like to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel anywhere without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry if it is any disappointment to you, but I believe I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fool has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. In matters like these, it's more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you presume, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is clear our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I wait tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many any interesting walks in this vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of those hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties. No, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden you have here, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I didn't know there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I don't see how anybody can reside in the country. If anybody who is anybody does, the country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers are calling agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it very much at present. It is almost an epidemic among them, I have been told. May I offer some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is hardly fashionable nowadays.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen in the best households.
And that's Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake! I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such ways. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady here?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such a silly idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I was sure there must have been some misunderstanding, dear Gwendolyn. The man whose arm is at present around your waist is none other than my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack. Oh,
Cecily!
Here is Ernest.
Darling.
One moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady here?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could put such an idea into a pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I thought there might be some slight error. The man you are now embracing is my cousin, Algernon Moncrieff.
Algernon Moncrieff? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
Sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister.
There is just one question I would be allowed to put to my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing! There is just one question we would like to be permitted to put to you. Much depends on your reply. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both to be engaged to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where he is at the present moment.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really very inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I can tell you candidly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I have never had a brother, and I haven't the smallest intention of having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you a brother of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
Well, I think it is quite clear that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of affairs is what you would call bun-burying, I suppose?
Yes, and a very wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I ever had in my life.
But you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury whoever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, having the smallest notion about everything, I fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction that I have in the whole of this wretched business, that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to do. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother's a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so often as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing, either.
Well, as for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I think you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is perfectly inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
And I can see no possible defence, Jack, for you deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young woman like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she's my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that's all. I love her.
I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, there is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
And I can't see much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I certainly wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business in public. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins, while we are in this terrible trouble, I can't quite make out. It seems to me perfectly harmless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner, now can I? The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly harmless you're eating them at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything but food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of eating muffins.
Well, that's no reason you should go eating them all, that greedy way.
I wish you'd have some tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
Good heaven! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
I thought you said it's perfectly harmless eating muffins.
Perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. It's a very different thing.
Well, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Oh dear, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner first. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30. Naturally, I will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest, that would be absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I have ever been christened by anyone. I should think it extremely probable that I never was, and Dr. Chasuble would agree. It's entirely different in your case. You have already been christened.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so. So, I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite sure about your having ever been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this past week in Paris by a severe chill.
Oh, but you said that the severe chill wasn't hereditary, or anything of the kind.
Well, I dare say it used to be. But it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Check her at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
Well, I don't like tea cake.
Why do you allow to be served to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I wish to goodness you would go. I don't want you here. Where did you go?
I haven't finished my tea yet. And besides, there's one muffin left.
The fact they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't to cough.
They're looking at us what effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. Britons never, never shall be slaves. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. The Britons never, 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 never shall be slaves.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing! There is just one question I would like to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrieff, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a very satisfactory answer.
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the marvelous beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it so you might be able to come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the time for German skepticism. Their answers appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrieff said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
So we should forgive them.
Yes! I mean, no.
True. I have forgotten there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. So which one of us should tell them? I'm afraid the task is not a pleasant one.
Can we not all speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as others. You will take the time from me.
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For me, you are willing to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, are you willing to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How foolish to talk of the equality of sexes when matters of grave importance are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Darling.
Darling. Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to
Come here, sit down! Sit down immediately! Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. Apprised to my daughter's sudden flight from a trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased with small coin. I fallen trapped once by the witch. Her unhappy father is, I'm glad to say, under the influence that she's attending a rather lengthy lecture at the University Extension Scheme on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him, nor do I propose to undeceive him on any question. Now, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment, and on all points, indeed on all points, I am firm.
Gwendolyn and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. Now as regards Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
is it in this house your infinite friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh. No, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh yes, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he
was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he a victim of a revolutionary outrage? I didn't know Mr. Bunbury was so interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
I mean, he was found out, Aunt Augusta. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, and so Bunbury died.
He must have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I'm glad to say, however, he made up his mind on some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. Now with our friend Mr. Bunbury out of the way, Mr. Worthing, may I ask, who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
This lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
Cecily and I are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrieff and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I don't know whether there is anything particularly exciting in this particular air furniture, but the number of engagements that go on is well above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of the question. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected to any of the major railway stations of London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea any families or persons' origin could be of a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Jervis Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire.
3 addresses always inspire confidence even in tradesmen, but what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They are open to your inspection.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messieurs Markby, and Markby.
Markby, a firm of the highest position in their profession. I am often told that one of Mr. Markbys is seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also, you will be glad to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles of the German and the English variety.
My life crowded with incidents somewhat too exciting for a young girl. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We haven't a moment to lose. As a matter for Mr. Worthing, I'd better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, only about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Oh, good day, Lady Bracknell. So nice to have seen you.
Just a moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000 in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls in this present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. I regret to say we live in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear. Oh, pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair might as look as nature's left it, but they can be easily altered. A thoroughly experienced French maid comes up with a marvelous effect in a brief space of time. I remember recommending one to Lady Lancing, and in 3 months her own husband did not recognize her.
And in 6 months, nobody did.
Kindly turn around, sweet child. No, beside you is what I meant. Quite as I expected. There are social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of society are its wants of position and its wants of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on where the chin is worn, and is worn very high at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Miss Cardew is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
And never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. My dear child, you must know Algernon has only his debts to depend on, and I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never let that get in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
You may kiss me, Cecily.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may call me Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I suppose the marriage might take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I'm not in favour of long engagements. They give people the time to find out each other's characteristics before marriage, which I never think is advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's legal guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I positively refuse to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I must almost say ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but looks everything. What more can one desire?
Lady Bracknell, it pains me to have to speak frankly to you about your nephew, but the fact is, I don't much approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's not so.
I'm afraid there can be no possible doubt about the matter, Lady Bracknell. This very afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on a very important matter of romance, he obtained admission to my house under the false pretense of being my brother, and under an assumed name he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier-Jouet Brut 89, a wine that I was specially reserving for myself. But continuing in his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed the tea and devoured every single muffin! And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he knew very well from the first that I have no brother. I never had a brother, and I haven't the smallest intention of having a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
And Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Well, that's very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my own decision is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, child. How old are you?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You're quite right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it's a matter of time before you're of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I believe your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of no importance.
Pray forgive me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you a second time, but it's only fair to tell you that under the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is fully 35.
There's no grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women, of their own free will, who remain 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton, an instance at point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she's been at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I don't see why a dear Cecily should be even more attractive at the age you mention at present. There'd be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me until I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even for 5 minutes for anyone. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I love punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrieff.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively, she cannot wait till she's the age of 35, which seems to me to show somewhat impatient nature. I beg of you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your hands. The moment that you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
What you propose is out of the question.
Well, it seems that a passionate celibacy is all any of us have to look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Oh dear, use 5 if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings? Isn't that somewhat premature?
Well, these gentlemen have expressed desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he figured out that this was the time in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand then that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, they would be of much practical value to either of us, dear doctor.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pupillage that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Prism? Did I hear you mention Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Brackman. I am on my way to join you.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This may prove vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of the repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. What position does she hold in your household?
I am a servant, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's most esteemed governess and valuable companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, let her be sent for. I must see her at once.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting there nearly an hour.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell, number 104 Upper Grafton Square, in charge of a perambulator containing a baby of the male sex. You never returned, and through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was found, alone, at midnight, in a remote corner of Bayswater, containing a 3-manuscript volume of more than a revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared, as usual, to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place the work of manuscript that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. And in a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the baby in the handbag and placed the manuscript in the bassinet.
And where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist upon knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained the infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
At which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Wait here for me, Gwendolyn.
If you are not too long, I will wait here my whole life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I need hardly to tell you, Dr. Trunchbull, that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. It's hardly considered a thing.
Your garden is a very emotional nature.
The noise is extremely unpleasant and sounds like people having an argument. I disapprove of arguments of any kind if they are vulgar enough to convince him.
It has stopped now.
I wish you would cut this out conclusion!
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you answer. The happiness of more than one life depends upon your decision.
Yes, it seems to be mine. Here is the injury received by the passing of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here, on the lining, is a stain caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident which occurred at Leamington. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I had forgotten I had had them placed there in an extravagant mood. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than the handbag. I was the baby that you left in.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Oh, unmarried, well, I do not deny that that's a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? And why should there be one rule for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is a lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid what I'm about to tell you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrieff, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's older brother? Well, so I have got a brother after all. I always knew I had a brother. I told everyone I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother, Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother, Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you scoundrel, you shall have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother, not one day in your life.
Well, not till today, I admit, old boy. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own one? But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you are someone else?
Good heavens, I had quite forgot the matter. Your decision on the subject of my name is quite irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Well, I suppose it had better be settled at once. Aunt Augusta, at the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened,
Every luxury that money could buy, including christenings, had been launched on you by your fond and doting parents.
so it's settled then. I was christened. Now what name was I given? Let me hear the worst.
Being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes. And what was my father's Christian name?
At the present moment, I cannot recall what the general's Christian name was, but I admit he had one. But I admit he was eccentric, but that was only in later years due to marriage and digestion and cold climate and other things of that kind.
But, well, Algy, can't you remember our father's Christian name?
I'm afraid we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
The general. His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose.
The general was a peaceful man, except in his domestic life, but I have no doubt his name will appear in any military directory.
Well, the army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Generals. Malum, Maxbom, Magli. What ghastly names these people have. Markbe, Mixbe, Mobs. Moncrieff. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, General 1869, Christian names, Ernest John. I always told you, didn't I, Gwendolyn, that my name was Ernest? And it is. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Ernest, my own Ernest, I felt from the first you could have no other name.
The general's Christian name was Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that for all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can't, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia.
Frederick at last.
Cecily at last.
Gwendolyn at last.
My nephew, you seem to display signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have now realized for the very first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.